If you want to win more races, you need to drive a slower car. But wait, before you click away, let me explain. This strategy is based on the idea that a low-level car can greatly influence the direction of the final race. With this in mind, you simply head in the opposite direction of your opponents and you're well on your way to victory. Sounds pretty easy, right? But the big question is, does it actually work? To answer that, I tested this strategy in more than 50 Eliminator matches, and the end result just might surprise you. Make sure you watch to the end, as I'll be sharing 2 additional bonus tips that you don't want to miss. Alrighty, let's get started. So for the most part, I decided to only use level 1, 2, and 3 cars. This meant that I would be driving a lower level car than my opponents in most, if not all, of these matches. The Audi RS6 is the obvious car of choice here since it's a low level car but decently quick at the same time. Let's take a look at our first match. After swapping my way too fast Brocky for a slower RS6, I decided to set up camp over here. Normally, this would be my exit point and I would look to head southeast towards the finish line, but this isn't normal. My goal was to try and force a finish towards the south. Take a look at how that played out.
Final Showdown in 3, 2, 1, go!
Was that perfect or what? I tried this location 2 more times with the Volvo and the Ford Escort, and this is what happened. Both of these races were longer than the first, but the directional impact was definitely still there, even with the additional opponents. However, this next location was the exact opposite. I tried pulling it north, but the finish went south. I tried pulling it south, but the finish went east. I tried pulling it north again, and again, the finish went south. There were more opponents at this location, and I'm sure that played a big role in determining the race direction. But in the end, this was just like playing whack-a-mole. I just couldn't get it right. The same thing happened in the next zone. Even though I tried pulling the race eastwards in the lowest level car possible, the finish still ended up going northwest. 2 more attempts with the Audi Quattro and Ford Focus followed, but the end result remained unchanged. I wasn't able to force a finish directly eastwards. So that didn't work. But what happens when all the drivers agree on the same direction? Take a look.
3, 2, 1, go!
In this next arena, I once again had numbers on my side. 3 of the 5 drivers agreed that going west was better than going east, and you can probably imagine what happened next. I wasn't expecting it, but this ending was a definite bonus. Moving forward, I decided to try this same exit route again. With 2 of the 4 drivers heading west, the finish line location was once again exactly where I wanted it, even though the ending was not. For these next 2 examples, the finish line target stayed the same. There were no other cars heading west with me, and since it was a 1v7, I was a bit surprised to see where this finish line ended up going. And the best part was this. How does the saying go? Don't fix it if it ain't broken? Or something like that. I tried this exit again, and again, the direction and ending repeated themselves. Maybe there is something to this after all. My next goal was to try and force another westward finish, but from this new location. And as you can see, it didn't quite go according to plan. However, at the next opportunity, I noticed that Nico Colt was also in the same session and decided to get him involved. We went full Team Poggio and managed to pull the finish line location away from the other 2 level 7 cars and in our favor. Unfortunately, I wasn't fast enough to make it a Poggio 1-2 finish, but congrats to Nico Colt for an awesome drive. That was a well-deserved victory. Next, I decided to tackle the mountain. Normally, I would exit southwards down the back of the mountain here, but this time my goal was to try and force a northeast finish. If you look at the minimap, you'll notice one other player also decided to head in this direction. Take a look at how that played out. I got the direction I wanted, but in the end, my terrible driving meant that both the RS200 and the Brocky overtook me. My next attempt was with the Veloster, but for some strange reason, 2 of my 3 opponents also decided to head this way. The finish line once again went northeast, but just like before, I got beaten by another level 10. Maybe I should have stayed with the Ferrari. The next 2 races from here were less decisive. In both cases, I only faced 3 opponents, and the finish line was the same for both of them. In my 5th and final mountain attempt, I faced a whopping 9 other opponents in the Final Showdown. And even though I had the lowest level car, the finish line went decisively against me and towards the south. One of the biggest surprises was this next race. I only had two opponents, a level 6 and a level 9 car. They took the traditional route west, while I tried to pull the finish location towards the east. If there was ever a moment for this low level car strategy to shine, it had to be here. Imagine my surprise when this happened instead.
Final Showdown in 3, 2, 1, go!
But hold on, maybe it was a fluke. I tried again with the exact same setup. Two higher level cars headed west while I took the Macan towards the east, and once again, I couldn't believe that my car had zero impact on the race direction. Things only changed when one other car decided to join me. That was when I finally got the finish line that I was looking for. In the next zone over, I again tried pulling the race eastwards. Two of my three attempts were utter failures as my opponents managed to keep the finish line facing west. However, my third attempt fared much better. The finish line didn't go east per se, but at least it didn't go west either, and the end result was perfect. I didn't have much success with this next zone either. Against 6 opponents, my pull towards the south had no effect, but when one other player decided to join me for a 2v7, well, it still had no effect. Next up, we have the two arenas south of the pyramids. The standard exit here is north to northwest. However, my direction of choice was once again east. I tried this 5 separate times with the Macan, Audi RS6, VW Golf, and twice with the Peugeot. On 4 of these attempts, the actual finish locations ended up going northwest, north, northwest, and then north again. Maybe there's a pattern here. However, on the 5th and final attempt, Nicole just so happened to be in the same lobby and decided to join me heading eastward. With 2 of the 3 players heading in that direction, the finish line finally went exactly where I wanted it. In the end, I beat the Metro with the Peugeot, but I couldn't overtake Nicole in his Brocky. Let's swing around to the south now. Instead of taking the usual exit northwards, my goal was to try and force a finish towards the west. In 2 separate attempts with the Audi Quattro, the finish ended up going northwest. Not bad, but not exactly what I was looking for either. However, it really paid off in the 3rd attempt when I raced the VW Golf against a Metro and a level 9 Beetle. Apart from a failed block attempt just seconds from the finish line, this race was mine to lose, but lose I did. One arena where I did have some more success was this location near the east coast. The intention here was to swing the finish line towards the southwest, and it worked amazingly well. On my run with the Subaru, half of my opponents also decided to join me, so I wasn't surprised when the finish line went exactly where I wanted it. On my next attempt with the Mini, my one remaining opponent also decided to join me, and just like before, we got that perfect finish towards the southwest. What made it even better was this. Next up, we'll take a look at the arena adjoining the last one. My typical exit here is northwest, but this time I'm aiming southwest. Against 4 other opponents, I was really surprised to see the finish line going directly north. Next time, I readjusted my target northwards, and against 4 other opponents, I got exactly what I was looking for. Well, almost. Wrapping up, there's one more arena that I want to show you. This time I'm aiming south instead of my usual westward exit. Against 3 opponents in the Audi Quattro, the finish line went west. I tried again with the VW Golf, but once again, my opponents managed to pull the finish line westward. I have seen the finish go south here, but for some reason, I wasn't able to get that result in these tests. So back to the first question, does this low-level car strategy actually work? Personally, I was getting a lot of mixed results. Some locations definitely worked better than others, but overall, I had more losses than wins in these tests. If you do see low-level cars in the Final Showdown, it's worth watching what direction they take, but overall, I don't think I will be deviating from my usual exit routes too much because of them. As long as you have the faster car, you still have the opportunity to catch them based on your speed advantage. And like I promised at the start of the video, I'll now be sharing with you 2 tricks that do work. First, before the Eliminator starts, drive to an area where you've seen a car drop before. If you hear music or see smoke, you know there will be a car drop there at the start of the game. In this case, I knew that a Porsche Cayenne would be waiting for me. Then, you simply spawn there, wait for the game to start, and go pick up that car drop. This next tip has to do with predicting race direction. Whenever I challenge someone, I always apply the 3C rule. Check, choose, confirm. Number 1, check your map. Number 2, choose a direction. Number 3, wait for confirmation. For step number 1, make sure you always have a way to pull up the big map at a moment's notice. This is vital for setting up step number 2. For this race, I chose to go northwest since I knew that the arena was shrinking in that direction. But how do I know if I'm heading in the right direction or not? That's where step number 3 comes in. The second after I challenge someone, I'm looking at the minimap. There's always a brief delay before the finish line location shows up, so I'm looking at the distance indicator to tell me if I'm headed in the right direction or not. If you noticed, my distance to the finish line was first 3 kilometers, then 2.9, and then 2.8 kilometers. So you see, I knew I was heading in the right direction even before the flag on the minimap confirmed it. In real time, it looks like this. Please hit the like button if you found this helpful and want to help support the channel, and consider subscribing if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.